The morning air was still, heavy with the kind of silence that made Ethan Cole uneasy. He stepped out of his small two-story house, coffee steaming in his hand, only to stop dead at the sight before him. A bright orange sticker clung to the windshield of his truck, garish against the faded green paint. It wasn't just a notice, it was an accusation. Violation, unauthorized vehicle parking, remove immediately or face fines. Ethan's jaw tightened. That truck wasn't just steel and rubber. It was the last piece of his father, the man who taught him how to change oil, how to drive stick, how to stand his ground. Losing it felt unthinkable. Across the street, a curtain shifted. Someone was watching. He peeled the sticker off slowly, the sound loud in the stillness, like tearing flesh. Later that afternoon, the HOA president arrived. Victoria Hale, polished smile, sharp heels, eyes like glass. She didn't bother with small talk. "You were warned," she said, her tone smooth but edged with contempt. "Trucks like that don't belong here." They ruined the look of the neighborhood. Ethan forced himself to stay calm. "It's my driveway, my father's truck. I'm not moving it." Her smile widened, cruel in its precision. "Then we'll see how much that memory costs you." She turned, heels clicking against pavement, leaving him staring at her retreating figure. The orange sticker crumpled in his fist, damp with sweat. For the first time in months, Ethan felt something stir beneath his grief, an anger that refused to be silenced. As night fell, the truck sat in the driveway like a monument. But in the shadows, unseen eyes lingered, waiting for his next move. The following days brought a new kind of silence. Not the empty quiet Ethan had grown used to since the divorce, but something sharper, like whispers just out of earshot. When he stepped outside, conversations ended abruptly. Laughter thinned into nervous coughs. Even the sound of sprinklers and lawnmowers seemed rehearsed, a cover for something else. The neighborhood was watching him, and he could feel it in the prickling between his shoulders. On Tuesday evening, a black sedan rolled past slowly. Inside sat Leonard Briggs, Victoria's most loyal board member. Leonard barely glanced at Ethan, but the slight smirk at the corner of his mouth spoke louder than words. A silent message. "We're in control." At the corner house, Claire Morgan stood on her porch, watering a row of flowers. She looked up briefly, her eyes meeting Ethan's with something softer than suspicion, something closer to pity. She dropped her gaze quickly, but not before Ethan caught the flicker of hesitation. Later, as Ethan carried groceries inside, he heard her voice from across the yard. Low, careful. "You should be careful, Ethan. They don't just stop." He froze. "Why are you telling me this?" She looked over her shoulder, then retreated inside without answering. The slam of her door was both warning and confession. By nightfall, Ethan understood. This wasn't about a truck. This was about control, power disguised as community. And somewhere in the shadows of this cul-de-sac, the lines between neighbor and enemy were already being drawn. By the end of the week, Ethan made his choice. He could feel the neighborhood pressing in on him, suffocating him with their stares, their whispers, their false smiles. So he struck back. 3 new trucks arrived one after another, gleaming beasts in black, silver, and deep red. He parked them side by side on his driveway and curb, like soldiers standing guard. To Ethan, it wasn't just a statement. It was defiance carved in chrome. The cul-de-sac erupted in quiet chaos. Curtains twitched, phones snapped photos, and within hours, Victoria herself stormed down the street. Her heels cracked against the pavement like gunfire. "This is harassment," she spat, her voice trembling not from fear but fury. "You're making a spectacle of yourself." Ethan leaned against the hood of his father's old truck, arms folded. "No, Victoria. I'm making a point. You don't get to erase me." Her lips curved into a thin, poisonous smile. "Every war leaves casualties, Ethan. Remember that." The warning lingered even after she walked away, her perfume sharp in the night air. That evening, as shadows swallowed the neighborhood, Claire appeared at his fence, her voice low and urgent. "You don't understand. They won't stop until you break." Or worse, Ethan shook his head. "Let them try." But inside, a fracture had begun. Every creak of wood, every passing headlight made him twitch. He'd fought back, yes, but something darker was rising in him. And as the trucks gleamed under the streetlight, silent and immovable, the battle lines were no longer blurred. They were carved into the pavement. The first sound was sharp, violent, the unmistakable crash of glass breaking. Ethan bolted upright, heart pounding. He stumbled to the window and froze. His red truck's windshield was shattered, glittering under the streetlight. Across the hood in dripping black spray paint, one word screamed back at him: outlaw. By the time he stormed outside, the night was empty, silent except for the distant bark of a dog. The trucks loomed like wounded beasts, their chrome scarred. Ethan clenched his fists. This wasn't a warning anymore. It was war. At the next HOA meeting, he didn't wait for order. He stood, voice shaking with fury. Whoever touched my trucks, cowards. And you, Victoria, you wanted a fight? You've got one. Gas rippled through the room. Victoria didn't flinch. You've brought this on yourself, Ethan. We protect this neighborhood. You're the one tearing it apart. The exchange cracked into shouting, neighbors rising from their seats, accusations flying. Then, chaos. A shove. A scream. The sound of something heavy crashing against the floor. When silence finally fell, someone wasn't moving. Blood pooled dark against polished tile. The boardroom, once sterile and cold, now stank of fear. Ethan's chest heaved as he looked around at the pale, horrified faces. The trucks were no longer the only monument to his defiance. There was blood now, blood that would stain more than the driveway. Red and blue lights washed over the cul-de-sac, sirens cutting through the night like knives. Officers cordoned off the street, their flashlights sweeping across manicured lawns and polished driveways that suddenly looked like a stage hiding rot beneath its veneer. Ethan stood near the curb, wrists trembling as he clutched the hood of his father's truck. The vehicle that once carried memories of road trips and oil-stained afternoons was now wrapped in yellow tape. A crime scene. Neighbors were pulled aside, voices low, faces pale. Claire lingered on her porch, arms wrapped around herself, eyes filled with something between pity and fear. She had warned him, but warnings had no power against obsession. Victoria's reign was over, shattered as completely as the glass on his truck. Yet there was no victory in the silence that followed. Only grief, only blood. Ethan looked at the gleaming row of trucks and saw not defiance, but monuments to a war he could never win. And as the police lights flickered across his face, one question remained, bitter and unshakable. Had he been fighting them or himself all along?